because we'll just continue. Okay, yesterday we were talking, we had finished by discussing good principles of design when you're talking about your visual component. Basically, not only making a presentation attractive, making it pretty, but really making it effective. Support your ideas well, be clear. And you had generated a number of ideas of how these don't work. Unlike some of the other skills of presenting, visual design includes a number of rules, of shortcuts, of skills, of tricks, of techniques that really are too long for me to go into in detail, and you'd probably fall asleep at some point anyway. So what I'd prefer to do is just for you to ask me some questions so I can give you some hints. For instance, I'll give you an example of what I'm looking for. If you were to say, well, Mr. Clarkson, what about these poor quality images? I don't know quite how to find high quality images. Everything that I find seems to be a horrible quality. When I expand it, it pixelates. I can't find good pictures. So what can I do? Well, two things you can do. First is you can use Google Images intelligently. Many of you may not know that Google Images, after they updated it like a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, included on the sidebar to the left the ability to control the size of image that it pulls up. Size doesn't mean square, rectangle, or shape. It means the amount of pixels. So if you click on medium or large in size, it'll only pull up densely packed images that once you expand them still look really good. And it'll distinguish and get rid of all the smalls. It'll be like a 150 by 150 pixel, and that when you expand it, it should be a postage stamp. When you expand it, it pixelates. So use Google Images intelligently. There's one way to solve that problem. Second way is to use some other kind of resource. How many of you are familiar with Flickr? Only about a third? Okay. If you're not familiar with Flickr, become familiar with Flickr. First of all, you want to spell it correctly. There's no E. Flickr. Flickr is, excuse me, an online service where people sign up, they get an account, and they upload their pictures to Flickr. Basically, it's like an online photo album that people can display to the world. So Google Images just searches the web, all sorts of websites for images. Flickr is an actual photo album for people to upload their own content, which means professional photographers upload their own content quite often, and the images on there tend to be extraordinarily high quality, very high resolution, and very nice. Some of the images you get from Google Images are not very relevant and pretty low quality. Flickr images are generally pretty high quality. Those of you who are looking for generic images because your novel or book does not have a film based on it, go to Flickr. If you go to Flickr, you'll find some good generic photos of people. So you enter into the search engine businesswoman, and chances are you will find a lot of generic, high-quality photos of random businesswomen, women in business suits. And then you can say, well, my character is a businesswoman, so here we go. Flickr is one of the marvelous web resources that you can use to solve that problem. Yes, Lizzie? You only have to cite in a portfolio. You don't have to cite on the presentation. Technically, I should make you cite on the presentation, but I'm not going to do that. I'll make you cite on the portfolio, just so you exercise that skill. But are there anything else? That's an example of a question. If you were to ask me, hey, how can I do that? There you go. Do you have any other tech questions, problems in visual design that you've encountered? You see a problem up there, you're not quite sure how to solve it? No? We're all good. Okay. Well, that works. Hunter? No. Yeah? No. You sure? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, can we have notes, like note cards?
Of course. You may have note cards. You may not look at them. No, I'm just kidding. You should not read from them, of course. My favorite, of course, is my favorite image of that is Willy Wonka in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory reading from his note cards. You guys remember that scene? No? The new one, where he first meets the kids and he says, "Hello, children. Welcome to my factory." And then he goes to the next one. Anyway, okay. Blah, 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 blah. Let's talk about something else regarding the visual component, interaction. This is a different principle, a different idea. And it doesn't talk about just how pretty it looks or how effective it is at conveying information. It talks about relationships. So let's talk about relationships here. That's the most important thing in the room. What is it? No. No. I've just got raised because I'm saying it's shining and important. Jeez, you people. What's the most important thing in the room right now? You. Me. Thank you very much. I'm joking and I'm not. I'm not joking because in terms of the commerce that's going on here today, in terms of the development of ideas, I am central. I am the presenter. I am the one who controls where this class goes intellectually. I'm the one who controls discussion. I am the referee, and I am the person who provides and bounces off ideas. So, there's me. You. Second most important. Screen. Okay, 3 components. What is the primary relationship? What is the most important relationship in this room right now? They're all mumbling. The most important relationship, Lizzie. Presenter and audience. Lizzie, where should eye contact be most of the time? Presenter and audience. Eye contact there. So Lizzie, if that's correct, what is the secondary relationship? Audience and screen. What relationship should almost not be there? In a certain way. How should that relationship not really exist, Lizzie? I shouldn't be reading from it. I shouldn't be looking at it all that much, except when I'm directly interacting with it. So this relationship between me and the screen is tentative, partial, and very unimportant directly. How is it important? So visually and physically, it shouldn't be important. I should not be worshiping this screen. I should not be on this screen doing anything more with it than I need to. But what's the quality of this relationship? How do it and I relate? How so? Very good. It supports my ideas. If this is the primary relationship between me and you, then this is helpful to support that relationship. It is secondary. It is supportive. That means it is always inferior. It helps key some of the visual learners, and it helps you remind yourself of where exactly you are in this presentation. So if you were sitting there and you're hearing a lot of words come out of my mouth and a lot of sentences, and you kind of lose your place and you want some perspective, and you're like, where are we in this presentation? Oh yeah, we're talking about the visual component, interaction, whatever that means. What does that mean? Oh wait, he included a few extra words to expand on that a little bit. Okay, now I can go back to listening to his details. This slide provides support for my voice, but what you must always realize is these things are pretty, but they are not primary. Primary relationship is between you and me. And that primary relationship is one of sight, you looking at me looking at you, but foundationally one of sound. Speech. That's why it's called a speech. That's why it's oral presentation, because it's fundamentally that. So you should never treat this like primary. You should never treat this as if it's central. You should never worship it. You should never turn your back on the audience and start reading from the screen. Yeah, at some point for certain effect, you might get back here with the audience and look at it as if you're looking at the image with the audience and you're looking at something crazy. Sure, I could see something random like that happening. But for the most part, your back is to the screen to show the audience that you are more important than it is. So, how do some students make this mistake of allowing the screen, allowing the visual presentation to take primary importance in the relationship? What do they do? Katie?
Well, I was going to say, like, they're not comfortable with the material,
Okay, so that's correct. So that's a motivation. They're not comfortable with the material and talking about it, so that means they want to give more of the power to the screen because they think, well, the screen's going to know more than I do. How could the screen know more than they do? There you go. You put all of your text on it. Remember McMillan's little funny speech yesterday? The first slide, he said, don't write all of the words that you are going to speak on your slide. Because even though this reduces the ability or the necessity to memorize, it makes everything dull. It makes it dull because this is lifeless. This is a dead screen. This does not have any energy in and of itself. You have energy. So you give that energy to the audience. Do not turn your back and just read from it. What else might students do? Other mistakes that would reduce interaction? No? Yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with the visuals, really. Yeah.
They might like stand in front of the screen.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So you could stand in front of the screen when people should be looking at the screen, although there might be a value to standing in front of the screen when they shouldn't be looking at the screen, when there's something out back there that they should not see. However, I was thinking also when whatever's up here does not seem to directly match what is being spoken. Whatever you are speaking should match what is on the screen. And you should notice from my To Kill a Mockingbird presentation that every time I came up with a new idea, I advanced the slide. How many slides do you think were in my To Kill a Mockingbird presentation? Oh, very nice. What? Yeah, it'll always say it right here. 35 slides, that's correct. 35 slides in the space of 12 minutes. Can we do the math? No? No, it's honest. I can't either. That's why I'm giving it to you. That's somewhere between 15 to 20 seconds per slide. That's reasonable. For a presentation of that nature, that's reasonable. What I'm giving you right now is not necessarily a presentation. It's teaching. It's a lesson. It's slightly different. It follows a lot of the same principles. But you're giving a presentation, yeah, 15 to 20 seconds per slide is reasonable. One of the best presentations I ever saw was narrowing that down to about 3 to 5 seconds per slide. But that's just because the guy had put in hours of work on his presentation, and every time he said something, he was able to click, and there was some other image that was emphasizing what he said. It was a dynamic, wonderful presentation. It really moved, had a lot of energy to it. Must have taken forever. So the only reason I don't include more slides is time. It takes time to build them. But if you're working on a 12-minute presentation that is one grade out of a year, and it's the biggest grade that you have in that entire class, you should have the time to build one with a lot of slides. And those slides should move. And whenever you come up to a new topic, you should have a new slide. Right now, I've got one slide that is a master slide for this stage of the presentation. I could have had one slide that was a master slide, and then the next slide a subpoint slide, and the next slide a slide a subpoint slide, and the next slide a subpoint slide. I could have had a new slide for every single new idea that I'm presenting to you right now. I could have subdivided visual component interaction into about 10 more slides if I had the time. I threw the time into that To Kill a Mockingbird presentation, and that's why I brought it down to about 15 to 20 seconds on average per slide. If you're doing that, here's what's happening. Your speech moves. It goes from one point to the next to the next. It should continue to advance and introduce new material, and that's a well-written speech. If that's the case, your interaction with the visual component only happens when it moves too. And as you speak, it moves. You have a new idea, it should move. You're developing a new topic, it should move. You're entering a new section of your presentation, it should move. You're asking a question, that question should be posed up there. You're ready to answer it, it should move. Something should happen. But in that case, it's not overwhelming. If you are training yourself for more slides, more content, more motion, you got to restrict the amount of content on those slides. So you'll train yourself to reduce the text. And you should see that with what I was modeling on that Mockingbird presentation. By the way, the best way to do this also is to have one of those clickers. You know what clickers presenters have? So clickers are awesome. I actually have a clicker for my smartboard. It's super cool, and it's really compact, and you would never even see it. You would just see the smartboard mysteriously move at my mental Jedi-like command. Unfortunately, it also moves the slides on Mr. Moffat's computer right over in that room, which would be really funny if I just wanted to sabotage him every once in a while. And unfortunately, he has one too, and it messes with my computer, so he can get into a little war with me, and nobody would really win. What's up, Dan?
Like, if I use PowerPoint, wouldn't it have the same less slides than, like,
Why would PowerPoint have fewer slides?
because you're using a different slide for every action?
Oh, true. Absolutely. Daniel's got an excellent point. It's a tech point. So for PowerPoint, you could have 10 slides that would equate to 40 slides in Notebook. Because with Notebook does have animation, by the way. Notebook's animation is awful. That's why I never use it. That's why I use the other trick to advance information. Because the problem with Notebook's animation is whatever you want to fade in, if you want to do a fade in, like in a bullet, there's a ghost image of it before it fades in. So it's like never truly gone. But PowerPoint's got excellent animation. So these things pop up. Your one slide could actually have 4 different bullet points that appear one after the other. I would consider that to be 4 or 5 slides in the same sort of way. Yeah, that's an excellent point, Daniel. We talked about this a little bit yesterday at the beginning of class. However, it bears some repeating. So let's throw out some of the same information we threw out at the beginning of class yesterday and maybe even add some more. What are the problems that we see in speaking? Evan? I'm sorry? Give me an example. I want something more specific than nervous behaviors. Shaking. Zach? Talking quietly. Chad? Talking too quickly. Yes? Verbal fillers like an Yeah. Stuttering. Sway. Swaying. Dancing. Do you dance? Yeah. What else? Monotone. Yelling, yes. Do not yell. Mumbling. No. Yeah.
My sister's a nervous yawner. She yawns.
You're kidding. That's so inconvenient. Because at that one moment that you want people to think that you care, you yawn.
Yeah, like she rode horses and like she'd get up and ready for like race or whatever she did. And she'd like, and my dad would get so sick because she'd be like, I don't want to be here, blah blah blah.
Wow, nervous yawning. That's new. I've never seen that before. Don't just think, though, about your voice. Let's think about your body as well, because speaking is not only a verbal presentation, but it's also a physical presentation. So what other sorts of problems can you have with your body besides the dancing and so on? Okay, so we had intense eye contact. We've discussed that a few times, yes. Intense eye contact. What else? Yeah. Oh, nervous hand gestures, yes. So, by the way, what's probably the least forgivable nervous hand gesture, the one that teachers probably tell you to stop doing? No, not this. This can be okay. This cracking knuckles. I've not seen a lot of cracking knuckles, although that would be really annoying. And somebody said earlier, biting your nails. I've never seen that. I know, giving a presentation and you're biting your nails, that would be strange. I mean, I've also never seen anybody pick their nose during a presentation. But, you know, as soon as I say that, next week. But I was thinking of hands in the pockets. Hands in the pockets. And girls often will twirl their hair. So nervous hands, twirling your hair, Especially if you have very long hair, it's very easy to do that without raising your hand up, putting your hands in your pockets. Somebody in 7th period even said, you know, some of the neutral positions can kind of be annoying. Like a neutral position on hands is hands crossed right here at about your waist. And this is, what? Well, you ask, right? Because people, suddenly you become aware of your arms. They're like these things that you want to lop off during a presentation. You're saying, I don't know what to do with them. They're all, tie them behind me, do something. So a neutral position might seem okay. However, sometimes neutral positions seem artificial. I mean, how often are you walking around standing like this talking to people? You know, I hope one day to have a gigantic belly so I can just do it like this. But until that point, you know, I'm not doing that. So if you can stand it, just arms down at the side and use them for gesturing when it's natural to gesture. I gesture a lot. I gesture as a form of punctuation for sentences and different sorts of words. And that would be pretty natural. But next time you're talking with a friend, especially if you're standing talking to a friend, try to exert some conscious attention to how you talk. What do you do when you're just talking conversationally? Chances are really good that you're not doing this, and that you're not doing this. So think about what you're doing and try to mimic it when you're giving a presentation. What else? Anything else? Zach?
Lack of enunciation.
Oh, good. Which is similar to mumbling. Coral? I call this hiding, leaning against the wall. How many times during vocab presentations, you probably hear that a fair amount. You shouldn't hear it when I teach because I broke myself of hiding, but I've done it from time to time. There's this scary, large, looming audience out there, and all eyes, if you're doing your job, all eyes are locked on you. That can be frightening. And unconsciously, it can cause you to do this, to keep walking back until you can't walk back anymore, hoping that you can just sort of fade through the wall into another room. Try not to do that because that's outside right there, and it's cold. But people hide all the time. I keep the desks in this configuration for 2 reasons. Number 1, you are people who should be encouraged to discuss with each other. You should not be assembled before me like an army or a cult. Therefore, I do not arrange you in rows. Second reason, it restricts my space. Rows stop about here if you have enough space between the desks, and that gives me a very little amount of space in which to prowl. And I like to prowl, I like to move around, and I also don't like to feel constricted. I don't want to hide against the wall. I don't mind this space, because as much as I joke with Hunter and sometimes, you know, ridicule him, Hunter's a good guy, and I don't mind proximity. This is fine. He makes me feel comfortable. So does Jillian. Jillian's not very scary at all. Now, you notice I don't walk over here all that much, because, well, Kale, I don't know, he's threatening every once in a while. He's got the crazy eyes going on. But for the most part, I don't mind at all walking around and moving comfortably. Do not hide against the wall. There's no need to. Nobody here is scary. Zach? Yeah, staring at the ground. By the way, one also that I will mention that I forgot to mention in an earlier class is reading. One way to avoid speaking is to read. Reading is not speaking, folks. Reading from note cards or from a script is not speaking. People have asked me, may I have note cards? Yes, of course you can have note cards, but you should use them for reference. You should not read from them. Reading and speaking are not the same thing. You don't do them the same. If you're a good performative reader, you can pull it off, but chances are really good that none of you has had to learn performative reading. If you don't want to learn performative reading, then find yourself in a situation where you have to read a storybook to 5-year-olds. That'll teach you really fast how to be entertaining in reading, because they won't forgive you if you're not. But most of you are not doing that, so don't read, speak. Okay, so we have a number of problems that you faced, that you've seen other people face. How do we fix them? Natasha. Practice, practice, practice. The first 3 answers to that question are the same. practice, practice, and practice. If you do not have the time to practice your speech, you do not have the right to expect a decent grade. You are probably not, because I only encounter these very rarely, some sort of speaking prodigy who is just naturally a good speaker. You came out of the womb that way. Most likely, you are not naturally gifted as a speaker. Neither am I. I wasn't born able to speak in front of an audience. It's practice. It is absolutely necessary. So, practice does two things. One, if you are practicing in front of somebody else or you're recording yourself either with video or just with audio for review later on, then you're receiving feedback. Feedback from another perspective. And I know that this terrifies some of you and you think that everybody is busy. Walk up to your parents and ask them if they would have 15 minutes to watch you give your speech. Practice it a couple times yourself first, just so you make sure that you have it down, and then ask them if you can give your speech in front of them, or a friend, and ask them to be serious about it, and run through it seriously. Don't run through it for a minute and then stop and then say, oh, but here I think I'm going to do this. No, run through it, full dress rehearsal, and ask them to give you feedback. So if you want to address verbal fillers, feedback from somebody who's watching you will help in two ways. One, you tell them, I think this is my verbal filler. Can you count how many times and notify me? That'll help you. Or you say, I don't know if I use verbal fillers. I'm not good at listening to myself. Can you tell me what my verbal fillers are? I probably told you that story yesterday. My verbal filler when I started teaching was okay. Many of you use the verbal filler of like. Some of you use the verbal filler of But a good way to do it is to say, I know that I say a lot. Keep a count. And you give a 12-minute presentation, and they say, yeah, you said 45 times. That would actually, for some of you who have verbal filler problems, that's actually probably pretty low. 45 times in the space of 12 minutes, that's not bad, because that's a few times a minute. I don't know. We're not going to do the math again. This can help here. The coaching and feedback can help there. It can help here, and it can help here. Because people can tell you to slow down in a way that you can't tell yourself. People can tell you to quiet down in a way that you can't tell yourself. Chances are you're not practiced at hearing yourself, but somebody else will. Even somebody who's not very expert can hear it when you're doing it. They can talk to you about whether or not they're understanding everything you say. Basically, a lot of these errors that you've got can be solved by preparation and somebody actually giving you feedback. So find that person. Second thing preparation will help you do. And what can really solve a lot of these speaking problems. Knowledge of your subject. If you don't know your subject, if you do not know your book inside out, if you do not know your debate topic inside out, if you don't know your history research paper inside out, if you don't know your science research project inside and out, then you will be nervous. And nervousness will translate into one of these. Why are you nervous? Because you're on stage and you realize that you are now the expert in a certain subject and you have announced yourself as an expert and you're not. And if you're not an expert in that subject, you realize everybody's looking at you and they're going to find you out. You feel guilty and nervous and scared. What you should aim for is taking 20 minutes of ideas and discussion and scaling them back into 12, not taking 5 minutes of ideas and discussion and expanding it into 12. You should always be able to talk about your subject forever, and then just try to scale that back into a tightly focused presentation. That means for this presentation that you know your book, and you can talk about it in a number of different ways. And specifically, you know your interpretive claim. And you might have 4 different examples worked into your presentation to support and discussions to have, but you've got 3 more at the ready if you need to. You know your subject inside and out. I know this very well. First time I've taught a book, I am much more nervous at teaching the book than the 4th time I've taught the book. My increased mastery over a subject leads to decreased tension every single time, and it only happens with preparation. So you want to go through high-powered vocal training? Fine, you can. You can go find a vocal instructor. It's totally not necessary. All you need to do is prep and know your stuff. And interacting with your audience can't hurt either. We've talked about audience interaction. Audience interaction is good. We do not want to shoot for those presentations where there is a wall between you and the audience. We want every presentation, even if you are on stage speaking to 500 people, to feel interactive in some way. So how can you enhance interaction with an audience? Catherine, ask them questions. And responding to the answers is always good. Don't just ask a question and let the answer fall out. Ask a question, receive an answer, and if you can't, ask a follow-up question. Don't keep that going forever. You don't have all the time in the world. But questions and follow-ups are excellent. Hunter?
Making them laugh.
Ah, somebody mentioned this last time, and I agree. If you've made an audience laugh, chances are very good that you have just increased the connection between you and them, because people like people that make them laugh. And when they like you, they feel more connected to you. And they feel like they're having a comfortable discussion with you, which is quite nice. What else? What was one of the attention grabbers we discussed yesterday that can increase audience interaction? The survey. Very good. Interaction is often based upon the audience's feeling that the presenter is paying attention to them. So there are indirect ways to increase interaction, to increase that connection between audience and presenter, such as what? Oh, okay. Eye contact. Thank you very much. Increasing eye contact and increase interaction. What else? How can you indirectly or implicitly increase interaction with an audience, not just eye contact? Ooh, that's actually good. That's different, but that's good. I like this. And this is something you have to do before in the writing, but absolutely, write your presentation in such a way that it actually addresses their individual lives and make reference to their individual lives. And if you're correct, they feel like you're talking to them. Chet.
I like how you like walk.
Thank you. Movement. Physical proximity can be increased by eye contact. You can feel closer to me even though you're not closer to me. It can also be increased just by walking, being close to people. And of course, it's not just Jillian who's feeling like I'm walking near her. It's everybody over on this side of the room. If you watch somebody giving a presentation to that 500-person audience and they're on a stage, they will walk back and forth the stage. And that increases interaction. So if you increase interaction, you make the audience feel like they are part of this, they are more likely to be engaged, and once again, what follows? Solid retention. Time management. You are graded on time. You have a 10 to 12 minute time frame. You want to make sure to hit that. How do you do it? Two ways. Two ways to ensure solid time management. Practice is the easy one. Yes. And by the way, I know it's going to sound like, well, okay, Mr. Clarkson, is the answer to everything practice? No, but it's the answer to 90% of the questions and problems that you'll have is practice. So what's the other way? Time yourself while you're doing it. Now, in formal competitive debate, we're in kind of an artificial environment where we're not supposed to necessarily be speaking to a general audience. So we don't need to be all as polished as a speaker on a stage somewhere. So we actually, as speakers, will hold stopwatches. That looks kind of artificial, though. It's kind of crazy if you're looking at a presenter and they're watching a stopwatch every once in a while. So what can you do instead? Count in your head. You know what, Philip? If you have the brain power necessary to count to 12 minutes in your head while you've got everything else going on, I will give you an A+ for the rest of the year. You got to prove it to me, though. I'm not quite sure how you do that. Hunter.
Wear a watch.
You could wear a watch, but then you're going to watch. You like that? Okay. Bailey. glance up at the clock. However, and you're absolutely correct, Bailey, so what you want to do is control your environment in such a way that you can watch a clock easily without looking like you're watching a clock. So you want it, the clock over there would be bad. The clock up there would be horrible. Which is why, of course, there's that screw up there in the wall in the back, because that used to hold the clock. There was a teacher in here before, and there were 2 clocks in the room, one there and one there. And obviously the clock was over there, so the teacher could see the clock as well. But I consider that to be a little bit of a crutch. I probably have about, by my estimation, 8, 9 minutes left in the class. See, I was off by a few minutes. But I try to practice that. I try to know exactly where I am in the presentation without watching the clock, because I don't want you guys to think that I'm a clock watcher. It'll break everything down. So, situate a clock somewhere there. Here's what I'm offering for you. Handy little countdown clock. It has a stand, too. This is a wonderful countdown clock. Look at that. I push it over there to 12 minutes, and it started. It makes no sound whatsoever. Nice high contrast. Red on white. There's a stand, so you put this right here, and you can see it easily without looking like you're watching. In fact, you can see it out of the corner of your eye very easily because of the high contrast, big solid red on white. You don't have to look at it directly to get a sense of how much time you have left. It's a wonderful countdown clock, available for your use. And so you put it there on the stand, and you will be able to manage your time effectively. Kale, what was your question?
On the interaction with the audience, aren't asking a question in a survey takes the statement?
Not necessarily. Asking a question means that you are looking for a verbal answer. So if I said, when is it acceptable to use violence? Then I'm looking for somebody to actually give me a verbal answer that's not simply a yes or no. Survey would be, how many people ate breakfast this morning? And then I get hands raised. So you can consider question open-ended. You can consider survey yes or no. All right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about before and after the presentation. We've talked about this already, so I won't beat this into the ground. Preparation before the presentation as often as you can. Don't overdo it. You don't want to seem too rehearsed. However, make sure that you're preparing. Here's the last bit. Feedback. I'm betting that you rarely ask for feedback from your fellow students. I know sometimes teachers require you to give feedback, but I'm betting that you rarely go up to a fellow student and say, hey, I'm giving a presentation today. Would you mind taking some notes on the presentation and talking to me afterwards about what I seemed to do pretty well and what I didn't seem to do very well? Probably have never done that. You should. I love Southview, but one of the parts of Southview culture that makes me very sad and kind of frustrated is the fact that teachers do not walk into other teachers' rooms and watch them teach. We are very isolated, and we do not give each other that feedback. I think we should. I think we should feel comfortable to walk into each other's rooms and watch them teach and then meet with them afterwards and say, you know what, you do this. You might want to work on that. It's essential to improving ourselves as speakers. And you should consider doing that. Ask a friend. Say, hey, Jillian, I'm going to give a presentation today, and you know what? I trust you because, first of all, you're a nice person. Secondly, you're intelligent. So you've got the skills, and you're kind enough to bring me down easily. I want you to take notes. Just tell me anything that you think annoys you. You could do it open-ended like that, or you could say, Jillian, I've been really having a problem with some of my verbal fillers and my nervousness. I feel nervous. Could you tell me if I look nervous when I'm up there? And just give me some notes on what you think. And then Jillian's responsibility is to be critical. Your responsibility is to take it well. You are looking for brutal honesty. Jillian is hopefully going to be kind with that, but you are looking for somebody to be critical with what you are doing. Now you might think, well, but the presentation's over. What value is that? That's not the last presentation you'll ever give. You will give another one afterwards, and another one after that. And Jillian's feedback may not help you on the IRA presentation whose grade is already logged, but it will help you on the next presentation, and that grade is not yet logged. So you want to improve that one and improve the next one. Get feedback and talk to somebody about it. Don't feel afraid to. If you can prepare and get feedback and listen to all these principles, then of course success follows. Thank you, Aaron. Success follows, and we know, even though we don't like to admit it, that hard work and education are absolutely wonderful, but charisma and speaking ability often carry you farther in life. So work hard, but make sure that you have the ability to speak in front of others and give effective presentations. And if you can, you'd be amazed at some of the effects. Questions? No? Hunter? What about pacing? Pacing back and forth?
Yeah.
Well, it's an expression of nervousness.
Okay.
And once again, preparation and knowledge of your subject should reduce that. You should be fine.
We also